Continuing on with our outstanding guest speaker series, today the TMCC Library Open Genealogy Lab is proud to present Mr. Mark Morton, Treasurer and founding member of the Cemetery Conservators for United Standards. This discussion will be on cemetery preservation using do-no-harm methods. The CCUS is a nonprofit organization made up of cemetery conservators from across the country that educate and promote sound cemetery conservation. We are a fact-driven group that strongly adheres to National Park System guidelines, as well as collecting and putting forth their own research and documentation. Their research focuses on what we call the 6 basics, which are grave marker cleaning, grave tablet setting, tablet and slotted base setting, multi-piece monument setting, repairing broken grave markers, and infill of cosmetic work. So let's please put our hands together and welcome Mark.
All right, how is everyone?
Great.
All right. Well, I guess, the best thing for me to do is to go over the website. That's become my PowerPoint presentation anymore. You can see the mouse moving. This is, the home page. I'll scroll down the home page slowly. It'll probably be a little faster than I should, but, these are our categories. I'll come back up to them in a minute. But we've kept our homepage, very short. We've got a big class going on this June in Southern Ohio, just about 30 miles east of Cincinnati. Just some easier, quicker links, to places in the page. Some of the most used or most sought places. This is a tool that a fellow out west has developed, so we put this on here. It's a fantastic tool. I unfortunately don't own one yet myself, but I've used them. They really, beats a pry bar of any sort, and I'll come back to this video. But yeah, I'll start with kind of just, some of the 6 basics. We tried, we put the website together, based on a lot of experience that I've had, other conservators have had, and myself in teaching any of these classes. There are some kind of common sense, easy, no-brainer things, and then there's a lot of more detailed things that, you really have to hear someone explain and show you. And I still recommend, even though we've got the 6 basics on the site, the best thing is a good hands-on class, to really get your heads wrapped around, how these things work. But we've restructured the site, cleaning, we've got the tablet sets, this is the slotted base, the multi-piece, repairs, and infill. So I'll kind of go over those, briefly. There's a lot of information on this site. I think the last I counted, I'm pushing somewhere around 35,000 words, hundreds of images, and it's taken us quite a while to, put this together. We do keep adding to it every winter, so we revamped the site and added some new things. Cleaning, you'll see basics is really the heart of it, and the others are the same way, like tablet sets. Anything that says basics would be your real meat of the subject. We do have some other sections in there. Our pro versus con is kind of self-explanatory. Good sound methods, methodology, and products versus ones that are not. We made a link to tools and supplies. Technical will take you to MSDS sheets. Product explanations and product instructions on any of the lime mortars or cleaners and things that we have. Of course, we like to cover safety as much as we can. Some things do have video, not as many as we'd like to have. We have a fantastic PDF section, which I'll take you over to as well, which is under our additional information, because we have tried to make everything put everything on a PDF. It makes it so much easier if you did want to print it off, if you wanted to share the information, if you wanted to download it. Our friend Larry, that's our president, he is our computer guru. guy. He's made everything very snap-down capable for a phone, which has been, extremely helpful to myself, even though I, really structured the website, had a lot to do with the writing and putting it together. I can't keep track of all of it. And there's times I'll want to reference a PDF, so I can go there, pull it right up on my phone, and scan down through it. This one has a Beyond Basics, which, like I was saying, it's some of the subjects that people have asked about that are too hard to explain, or really aren't, something that you should have on a website, because it just is too hard to explain without being there, hearing it and seeing it in actuality. But yeah, we'll just, I'll now this I will probably scroll a little too quickly for most everybody, but just to give you a basic idea, this is a site that you really, if you're very interested in this, you should, set aside a couple of hours to really go over. We got the "do no harm" phrase actually comes from the AGS, the Association of Gravestone Studies. Do no harm is just a really good catchphrase. Whatever you do, you want to make sure you don't do harm. That's the main thing. So we start with, just some basics on cleaning. This will cover some biological growth. Couple of good cleaning videos, both by the Park Service down here. Recommended materials. Many different ways. Orvis is a very non-invasive product. Orvis soap actually, it's been used quite a lot on antique quilts because so many of those have a vegetable dye. So it's a very, very gentle thing for that. And people that are in the farming, business, have a lot of cattle, horses. This is what they, wash down horses or udders of cattle before they milk them. So it is a very, very safe product. And then we go over as many different ways, things that you would want to use, different ways to use these products, whether it's Orvis or the D2, which we was easy for us to do because we picked very safe, non-harmful products to begin with that were kind of no fuss, no muss. So you can't go wrong in how you use them, other than the Orvis. The only thing about it, it's a very highly concentrated thing. We explained that here too. You want to make sure you really rinse that off because it is so concentrated. And then, with all the other 6 basics, we go through harmful cleaning methods. Talk about no bleach. Talk about what to do, wire brushes. That's a common sense thing for most people, but believe me, I still spend a great deal of my time arguing with people not to use bleach and a wire brush on an old soft stone. Power washing, that's never really a good thing because it's really about the PSI. The Park Service will do it, but that's the Park Service. He's working on a granite monument, which is a very tough stone. The Park Service knows what pressure to use. There's people want to sandblast. Back in the Midwest, I'm from Ohio. Back in the Midwest, there's this thing called the Nylox wheel treatment, and it is like grinding the enamel off your teeth. You can see all the dust down here created. The Nylox wheel is actually an auto body tool. It's meant to strip rust and paint off of a car. And this is kind of the result many a time. So many years out, and this was roughly 3 years out, this stone was very legible, and now it's just, falling apart. We talk about, how damaging things can be, with creating fissures in a stone. This was an article that we put together going over, what was really bad about this Nylox process, and it's still out there quite a bit, is using an ammonia water breakdown. And it's supposed to be 1 part ammonia to 5 parts water is supposed to be safe. But for 2 reasons, we've shied away from it. One is that's something somebody can mix. And you know what people are going to do. Hey, you know what? I'll bet if it's 50-50 ammonia, it's going to clean it quicker, faster. I've run out of water. Let's just try straight ammonia. That's where, it gets to be a bad thing. But also with this process, and mainly connected with that Nilox process where they grind on the stone, what actually happens is, what we found out is ammonia is also used in, farming, and is very much in fertilizer. So if somebody comes along and takes off that protective skin on that stone, they're opening up all the pores to the stone and then fertilizing it actually by using ammonia to clean it with. That's why a stone like this has so much more biological growth on it. It just, the two things coupled really is destructive. We've got some other pictures down here, links and things to some of the stuff. I'll go over this just because it showed up. This is a product that's been out for quite a while. There's been a lot of controversy about it. And we've just kind of taken the point of what we need to do is get it researched. We're trying to raise some money now. I've been working with a lab up in Michigan that will darn near reverse engineer this to tell us what's in it, because the folks at Wet and Forget just are not very above board about explaining everything in it. They don't care about any sort of study being done as to where the other product, which it should be up here. There are really two products for biological growth that are safe. One is D2. It's D2 biological solution. It's been out for about 10, I think more like 15 years now. That is a product that went through a very extensive 7-year study with the park system. We used to, and that's being demonstrated actually in this video from the Park Service by Jason Church. He's probably the best person with the Park Service, most knowledgeable. We're thrilled to death to be able to talk with him, as busy as he is. But he had been over this study that the Park Service did, where it went through 2 independent labs, and then actually it ended up at Harvard to compile the 2 independent studies. They went to 7 different sites across the country, so you had different stone types, different atmospheric conditions, and the park system is extremely picky about, I guess you could say, technically endorsing or coming out in favor of any type of product. So that's what we mean by something that's really been researched and taken to the carpet and really looked into, where Wet and Forget is something that's not. And with D2, the manufacturers were just bent over backwards to work with and prove how well their product works, and mainly how harm-free it is. In fact, they actually did a little bit of chemistry change because there was a little too much salt quality that they didn't care for. So they found a way to re-engineer and take that out of it as well. So those are good proven things. There is one other product I'll mention, and that's a product called Revive by a company called Proseco. Proseco's been out since the 1930s, and the Revive product is equally as good as the D2. D2 just did a better job marketing. That's really about the only difference. We do have I know I scrolled past it. We do have a pH chart. One sits on the negative, and one on the other side, but they're close enough to pH to the neutral side that makes them very safe. And the Orvis is almost completely neutral. So tablet sets. Tablet sets, I think, are some of the most basic. Your Arlington type of, these are tablet set markers that you would see in Arlington. They are very easy to set. And they set a lot like an old-fashioned tablet-style tombstone. They set by a rule of thirds. You bury the bottom third, and generally, sometimes they'll go right to this cutoff mark. That's what we call it. It's kind of like the final mark of the carver that says, "Okay, I'm done, carving information." You may find a maker's mark down here, which is literally the carver signing his name, very small. Sometimes, they're done more on a mass sort of thing. It's the difference between, a very localized private carver or, say, a company out of a bigger city. But tablet sets are pretty breezy. This gives you an example of how some of these can sink and literally straight down in the ground. These are normally, the height on them does vary depending on the different years that they've been made, but they can be an easy 43 inches. And it is amazing to see one where you barely see the top and find 43 inches of this sink straight down. Here's some, pulling them up and out. There's one I did a few years ago in eastern Ohio, western Ohio down near Cincinnati. I was doing some work. This is me with the hat on. I'm 6 foot even. Look how tall this stone is.
Wow.
An easy couple 100 pounds. So we were very careful with it. This is an old sandstone. If I'm not mistaken, I want to say this was early 1840s. So I had, a couple guys helping me out here. Very big, heavy stone, but they're also very brittle. So we actually, since I had 2 people, we got it up out of the way so I could work on the hole and get it the right height. And they just kind of stood here and hold it, as opposed to taking the chance of trying to lay it down, because every time you do that, you're putting the weight somewhere in the center where it could be brittle and break under its own weight. The government markers are a lot thicker, much more heavy duty, and you can still order white marbles. They've also got several granite versions, which are beautiful. And the nice thing about granite is, it'll last pretty much forever. These are different sizes of gravel, too big, too small, and just right as a crushed limestone to pack in the stones. We never use concrete with something like that. I'll get to that more too. That's something we fight a lot against is concrete overuse, because it doesn't solve anything. Actually, the stone is going to move eventually, and if it has a big glob of concrete around it, well, you're going to have a heck of a time trying to get that re-leveled. Be trying to level a giant top. And this was from my job site down there as well. Okay, and we're into the don't use concrete in many, many ways. There's a lot of cemeteries where they don't know what to do with pieces, and they just lay them flat out in concrete. It's horrible for a couple of reasons. One is modern day concrete. There's a chemical reaction between it and marble stone, period, and especially an older marbled stone that has age on it, because the chemical makeup of the stone changes. So that's not good. The other one that really is kind of the no-brainer, they're face up. They're going to get just pummeled with, all kinds of inclement weather and deteriorate that much faster. Here's an example. Somebody thought they were doing something good. They have clearly pulled this stone up. In fact, you can see the grass line. So there was probably just this much of it, left above ground. They pulled it up, and it was probably, size of one from further up, a good 3 foot to 43 inches, somewhere in that neighborhood, or like some of these down here. They didn't need to do this. They should have just placed it in the ground. I tell people when it comes to setting tablet sets, it's like a fence post. You level it one direction and the other, and get it, straight in both directions and packed in. You could do a concrete or a concrete collar I've seen before, which is literally a collar that slips over the stone, or the stone slips through, and then you use a good lime mortar around it so the concrete is not actually attached to the stone. That can help steady them, would keep weeds from coming up, in the immediate area. but it's never a good thing to put them in straight into concrete. This is another popular method, is to just take stones at random. They don't know where they went, and sometimes that is impossible and sometimes difficult to find out. And a lot of times it's just, sadly, a very easy button thing. Somebody said, well, let's just, make a big, curb or concrete of concrete and just put all the stones in it. These are sad memorials to see as well. They're artistic enough with the old stonework, but it's, these are at an angle, so they won't weather as bad flat up, but still, it's not the better choice. Things like this, there are ways, to repair these, so this is not needed. This one breaks my heart. You can see the jagged edge here and the jagged edge here. Why not just attach it to this? But that was somebody's choice. This is actually a sandstone or limestone base to a three-piece monument. I can see the top piece here, and that's the sub-base behind him. This is probably about a 600-pound block. I've, dug down around many of these and much larger on my own with a pry bar, raised them in the hole, packed gravel underneath, got them to a good level, and then restacked the stone. Why in the world would you put a concrete, layer on top instead of just leveling the stone? So that's, people do a lot of things. There's an example of some old sandstones, I believe, from New England that are now permanently encased in concrete. That's not a good idea either. This is somebody, actually, that has done a lot of work in New England. These are two footstones that he just happened to pick up, and this is his idea of repairing this stone. Just doesn't make any sense. And these are footstones. Yeah, I'll briefly explain. Does anybody here know what a footstone is?
Raise your hand if you do. Footstone? Yeah, we got one person raising their hand.
Okay. Well, go ahead. Explain briefly what a footstone is.
This is my understanding of the footstone. It basically marks the end of the grave, and or where sometimes you'll have like the mother and the father, with the name of the family, and then it may or may not have the headstone and the footstone.
Yeah, I mean that's basically it. They were a lot more prevalent back in the old days. And many times actually, perfectly mimic the headstone, and it literally is at the feet. Now, that pertains to, do you guys know what grave orientation is?
No, could you go ahead and explain that?
Sure. Grave orientation is east-west. It's got to do with, religious connotation of, at the end of times, when bodies rise out of the grave, they face east. So the graves are set up that way. So the feet are actually facing. Let me think. Yeah, how would that be? The feet would be to the east, because if you raised up, literally like you're on your back, you would be facing east. So there is this gravestone orientation, and that's a big reason there were footstones, to mark that as, just to help identify that. But people were also very particular about, we've all heard about, not walking on graves. Now, I got over that a long time ago in my business, because I have to walk all over the place, all over the cemetery, and, literally dig up the stones around them. But that they had footstones there as well, so that you would come up to the footstone and not have to walk in the grave. Just kind of help keep the grave in its own border, if that makes any sort of sense. Okay, I'll go to.
So it helps mark the grave for respect.
It really does, and footstones for me have become really a very, very valuable tool. Because everybody's been to an old cemetery that stones have come out of the ground. And a lot of old cemeteries have, maybe one tree where there's a bunch of stones piled around it. which is a very sad thing because nobody knows where they go. And so quite often when I'm on a job and I run across those, sometimes I have to just kind of make a good, a good guesstimate based on trying to match the name up, the surname. But I usually leave those for last because a lot of times I run across a footstone that sank straight down or, was buried that I know has been buried for a great many years. And lo and behold, the initials on the footstone match the headstone. So that gives me a lot better idea about placement. Plus, it's a historic thing. Now I do a lot of this commercially. One of the reasons a lot of footstones are pulled is the older ones literally are spaced out from the headstone according to the height of the body. So if it's a child, they're going to be a great deal closer to the headstone. So from a maintenance point of view from the cemetery, it's bad enough they have rows, but now they have all these little stones dotted in between, and they can't make a clean swipe with the mower. So I've kind of tried to work best of both worlds, realign the footstone where it belongs in front of that grave, but bump it into the next row. So the footstone is preserved, but they now have a clean path to mow, which, to me really, beats them picking them up and throwing them away. I've seen them use them for pavers and everything else. And, we try to be about historical preservation. You should never get rid of any sort of a historical, article, if at all possible.
I have a question
Yes.
regarding footstones.
Yeah.
On the headstone, you usually see the name, family name, the name, date, birth and death. What do you normally typically see on a footstone?
Footstone is usually just the initials. And what you were saying about the more modern ones, there are many that say, mother, father, or have first name of children. Those are mainly for, say, like a 4-person, 6-person, 8-person plot where there is maybe one good size multi-piece monument right in the middle, and then you find a lot of those stones that say mother, father, or names of people. Those are actually marking the exact spot in that plot where that grave is. But yeah, generally on a footstone, it's going to really, for the most part, just be initials. I've found some dates every now and then, but yet it is mainly initials.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Multi-piece monuments are, exactly what you see here. They range from the ones that are 4 or 5 foot. That's Reggie. I'm going to guess this. Well, they're going to put a piece on top. This is probably a good 6, 7 or so foot multi-piece. You have one. You have the main piece, the sub base, and then there's the base. So we go over quite a lot of that. There's one. And I want to mention here, too, believe it or not, many of these came from Sears and Roebuck. We've got some old, that's something that I've not put on the website yet. I've got some old images of, turn of the century, late 1800s, early 1900s Sears catalogs that literally have these things for sale. And yeah, we think dirt cheap today, but yes, back then, you could have got this for maybe $22. So there's a multi-piece. This is another multi-piece. We just, go over in this section, how to reset them. This looks very similar to the picture I showed you that they put the concrete on. Of course, we're not doing that. We're getting it lifted out of the ground and getting it to a proper height and leveled with good packed gravel of a good, probably a good 4 inches of limestone gravel pack. And we use that because it packs well, but it also lets things drain. And eventually everything is going to leave. So it's much easier to pop that up, throw some more gravel in there, retamp everything, walk away, and hopefully it stays this way for another 50 years. kind of a preventative maintenance way. This is us throwing some mortar in between them. That's that's a setting compound that we're addressing here. It's meant for granites, where this up here, this is a marble. Here's some stuff called wedge lead or lead wedge. We explained that. It's all part of the process of reassembling one of these moldy pieces. These were all pictures from different classes that I've done. There's that final from, the one above that was in pieces that I did. Well, actually, other people did, because I just go and instruct. When I teach, it's a very hands-on. And I'm going to go through these fairly quick, because this is, I think this was a 9-piece, a very tall monument. One of our members out in Oregon wrote this whole section up because it was just a very good example, and he did a fantastic job about really detailed disassembly, the tools he used, the step-by-step. And I tell everybody, a multi-piece it's all based on the same principle. It's just bigger, heavier stones and more pieces of them, and a taller tripod, or a different type of a gantry system, depending on what you need. So this is definitely an advanced thing. You would want a crew of people for safety and a whole lot of other reasons. But they've got a crew, and they've been at this for a while. But it was a fantastic example of something on a bigger scale, following the very same principles, and it turned out beautiful. And then, of course, we go over some don't use concrete, because people use concrete in this as well, so the concrete portion is kind of a repeat. Am I going too fast?
No.
Okay, good.
I have a question, and I may be jumping ahead a little bit of your presentation. If I am, let me know.
No, go ahead.
I would assume that before you could go into a cemetery to repair a gravestone, that you would need permission from the cemetery or the family?
Yes, that is an interesting topic. Yeah, definitely. You definitely need to get permission from the cemetery. I absolutely do, but it kind of comes part and parcel with when I do a commercial job at the township. Of course, there's a contract signed, and so that's absolutely my permission to be there. Plus, being in business, I have to provide insurance and everything. So all those I's are dotted, T's are crossed. But yeah, for a just an average person that wants to go work on an ancestor's marker, or we've got a lot of members that just kind of do things as charity, do-gooder acts. You absolutely want to get permission from the cemetery. Now, there's been some back and forth, and it is a never-ending argument about permission of the families. That really is going to boil down to your state's revised code. Every state's got one concerning cemeteries. I've read at least 8 different states and thoroughly read Ohio's, where I'm from. And like with most laws and revised code, it is fuzzy as it can be. You can read one thing and 2 paragraphs down, it completely undoes what you just read. Now, at least in Ohio, families do definitely have some say, but it's limited. Again, it's a very gray area. What I have found is, bottom line is, the cemetery really has the say, because they're the ones, in charge with the upkeep. They're responsible for the danger elements. They are the ones who are truly responsible. So if you go to the cemetery and they, give you the okay, then that pretty well, should cover everything. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I have another question. You mentioned that you get contracts from townships and such. I would assume that when you get a contract, that covers the cost of materials. When you're a volunteer situation, and you mentioned that some of your people are volunteers, how do you cover the cost of materials?
Well, that one really, for the most part, yeah, if it's a volunteer thing, it would come out of your pocket. Now, I've got two of our members that I can think of off the top of my head, actually three. Elaine's one of the ones that's on our board. Elaine and Bobby from up in Michigan and Kate north of me here in Ohio all started their own kind of pet cemetery projects. Let's see, the one in Michigan, they tied to their historical, group for Riverside, for that town up there. Kate did the same thing with the tiny little village of Brownhelm in Ohio. They used that as their kind of springboard. So it was really nice that they already had, something in place, an organization with, a good core group of people and members. So, most of those organizations, are able to raise money, put money together, or, have been established enough to tap into, local businesses or people that will help. Then, we've all worked together to try to get them, tools and materials, at the best possible cost we can, get for them, do what we can to save on shipping and things like that. But that's really, how the smaller groups have worked. And then, if it's just an individual, then you would, kind of have to collect things on your own. There's a guy, one of our members, John Maxwell over in Indiana, mainly works on veteran stones, but he'll do other such work too. And he just started with, a few $100s out of his own pocket, collected some tools together. But once people realized what he was doing, he said, people would just come up, give him $10, $50, $100, and he wasn't asking for it. They just said, we love what you're doing, wish more people were doing it. Here, put this toward your supplies, and that's what he does. So, those are some options. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we have a local volunteer organization here called the Hillside Cemetery Foundation, and they're basically all volunteers, and they took over basically an abandoned historic cemetery here in Reno, and they've been working for several years now, at least three or four more years, I think. But they've done wonders with restoring that cemetery, and I do know they have a Facebook page that they use to raise funds. They use Facebook fundraising, which seems to, I guess, work pretty good for them. Do you use the same kind of tools?
We haven't. We're definitely all over Facebook, and Facebook to me it's a double-edged sword. There's a lot of rules and a lot of things that can go on with Facebook and how you promote and move things around. We've not exactly utilized any of that with Facebook because we kind of felt we were maybe pushing the envelope enough with, just pushing our Facebook page and website and things like that. And there is some expense with anything like that. They're gonna take a bite of the money. We just, had found for us it was, better to work in other ways, and we haven't, really pushed it on that end of things. But I know it does work for, for a lot of folks. So it's not a bad way to go.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see. I'll cover a couple more of these, and then I'll show everybody a video, right? This is the basic repairs section, and we mainly, are talking about broken tablets, but there are, many types of repairs. Any type of stone can be broke for any number of reasons. So, we go over the cleaning, and the basic, mending of it with an epoxy. There are several ways to mend. Two of them I've been learning about the past couple of years, but I'm going to have to go and actually travel east and spend a fair amount of money out of my pocket to go through a couple of these classes. But it's going to be well worth it for myself as a business, but also so I can share the information with everybody else, because roughly right now it's really using a couple of different types of epoxy, which we go over on here. I think Lloyd put this together. That's the guy from out in Oregon. This is some of his work, his step-by-step, different clamp molds that he's conjured up to put things together. Lloyd will also do kind of like Santa's workshop and take some of these, back home and then back out the cemetery. But he documents everything very well, so nothing is misplaced. And of course, they're a pretty well-known organization out there. So he does a lot of that. His cleaning process, everything can be done in a controlled atmosphere. Now, mine's all out in the field. I don't take anything home, especially if the job site's 4.5 hours away. I can't really do that, so I have to work in the field. But he put together a very good section on this, recommended tools, so forth. And of course, then there'll be a big don't repair things with. That's always kind of, somebody used a lot of Gorilla Glue or caulking. I'm glad they found the pieces, but some other horrible things that have been used that run down the face of them. We go into some other things about epoxies that have failed, dangerous things. Somebody thought they would fix the fissure on this with a bunch of caulking. That's not going to last. It's going to do harm to the stone to boot. There are good infills that you can put in here, which are very fine mortars, which will adhere to the stone and be very much the chemistry and makeup of the stone. Some more DIY sorts of things. And then we're back to putting them in concrete. This one blew my friend away, Reggie's mind. They couldn't even get the stone squarely, braced before they epoxied it. That's just, that's kind of crazy too. And then these are just other sections you'll find at the bottom as reminders to other places on the page.
Now, so far, I think the pictures you've been showing mostly show like stones that even if they're in multiple pieces, they're all kind of put back together like a puzzle. What do you do when there's a piece of the stone missing?
That's very difficult. You can use some of the mortars and manufacture something. And I will get to. Matter of fact, I might go to. Can you remind me of that one?
Yeah.
Right after. Okay, remind me of that because I'll. We've got a guy that's one of our members does some fantastic work, and we'll see some that Bobby did as well, where they had missing pieces. The majority of the stone was there, and they just manufactured with some of these, acceptable mortars and infills, and we're actually able to. Some of them, if your artistry's fairly good, you can, maybe etch in the wet mortar. Some of the missing letters or numbers, if you know what they are. I will go back to that and show you a couple of good examples there. Infill is our, this is the polishing, finishing touch. It's for two reasons. It's cosmetic, absolutely, but it's also to keep, this one's been epoxied, and this is after they put infill, and you can't see anything. This is my friend Cynthia from Indiana, and you'll see here in a minute, I think, what she uses. Here's a time lapse of the cleaning, becoming cleaner and cleaner, and then you less and less see the actual fracture. She's really got the cosmetic thing down. You just cannot see it over here. She uses women's makeup sponges, and they are just, fantastic if you're fastidious or, you've done artwork and fine-tune artwork or woodworking type of thing. This is right up your alley. It's a little bit of a time consumer, but if you take your time, and I do it commercially, I've found that if I go through my process, which Lord knows I've got down now after going on almost 10 years. I always keep these makeup sponges with me, and this is my final, I just go over these very gently and just blend everything in, because what you want is to try not to be able to see, the old damage. And then we've got a few different mortar mixes in here. There is a couple in here I'm going to change up because we've just learned something recently about a couple of the mortar mixes. It's not so much a thing of them being bad for the stone. Say for instance, this one here that involves some white Portland cement. It's at such a small ratio, that it's not hurting anything. In fact, this small ratio is acting like a binder. It's not harmful, but it's not seeming to last. Where the other stuff that we're getting called Lithomix from a company called Limeworks over in Pennsylvania has really, really, really held up. So we're probably going to ditch this or make some sort of amendment to it saying, hey, this is not a harmful, it's not a harmful infill recipe, but we're finding that it's just not lasting. So you might want to rethink using it. And yeah, there isn't much to the infill. Like I said, that's just your finishing touches. And that pretty well covers, the 6 basics. Okay, yeah, back to your question. I'll go to members' work because I think I've got a good example of Brad's work. But this I like this section because this is what people can do. These are pictures from a friend of mine down in southern Ohio. They took on this multi-piece monument. I get this to click right for me. There it was in pieces. First step they came in and leveled that base. Now I'm guessing this base down here, this is a good 1,500 pound block. And he's got a very good crew. They're a historical society. And that's how they got their core group of people. I don't see my friend Anderson in here unless that's him. He went to one of my classes several years back, and then I came and taught a class for his people. There they are leveling it. They've got it, that far, and then they put it together. Beautiful. Very, very beautiful monument. This would be kind of an example of some of what you're talking about. This is from my friend Scott Banker up in New York. These are his basic tools. He's got a wood tripod. Basic. He's got his water. I think this is his Orvis soap. And he had this we call a small 3-piece, multi-piece monument. And this one had pins in it. You can see some of the rust and the rust wear here. And the old cast iron pins is why this came. Oops, sorry about that. This is why this one did come apart. He's getting the actual base leveled. He's got it leveled. Now here's his sub base, and this is where the pins were. And whatever's left, he removed them. But because they were cast iron pins, they rusted and they blew out the stone. So he's got some, he's got the pieces here, but there is still a lot of material loss down in this corner and some great big fissures. And he just, did what he could with a good lime mortar infill and lime mortar in between the pieces and finished cleaning it. But that is the problem with the old iron pins. They rust, expand, and they will literally blow out the tombstone. I've seen so many of these like this that blow out in that manner. This is some work from John Maxwell. The guy said does a lot of this as charity. This is David Gendron from Illinois. He's retired, and I don't want to hazard to guess how old Dave is. I know he's past 65. I think he's around 70. Him and his wife go out. They're both retired. They travel the country in a camper in the winter months, and then he goes and does this stuff, as volunteer or small pay. He does some amazing stuff on his own. This is some of Brad's work, but I'm not seeing better examples of what you were bringing up. But this is some of Bobby's work out of Michigan. This was just a simple, this had pins. They've been removed. She's mortared everything back together. It's got an orange tint to it. The D2 will discolor the stone while it's working. And I've seen, a variety of fluorescent colors. But never worry, the stone will never, it'll never be stained. First time I did it, I did kind of freak out because it turned a bloody orange, rusty red color. It freaked me out because it was one of my first jobs. I thought, oh my God, I've, stained this stone. But no, it's a good sign. It tells you that it's working. This was a beautiful cleaning job, and I think she did a remortar, with it too. I think they took it all apart, remortared it, re-leveled, and cleaned it, and that's just night and day. Beautiful stone for.
I have a question on this photo. Yeah. I see on the bottom part of the stone, you see a lot of lichen growing.
Yes, down here.
You mentioned D2.
Yeah.
Does D2 take off the lichen?
D2 is meant for lichen. The D2 and the Revived by Persico that I mentioned are the only two safe biological cleaners that we know of. And like I say, the Orvis is more of to get grime off. Now, a lot of people like it because what they'll do is they'll wet the stone down. They'll take a plastic or wooden scraper and, really loosen this up, scrape it off. A lot of people will use the Orvis just a couple of times to give a really good scrub down to get the majority of, the heavy off of there. And again, like I say, the Orvis is very concentrated. You want to make sure you really rinse it off well. And once it's rinsed off, then you would apply, just a spritz coating of D2 and walk away from it. And then it will lighten up.
How can you tell if the lichen has eaten into the stone?
Sometimes you can see that. We're seeing a lot of that in southern Ohio. I'll see if I can find it. There might be an example under some of Elaine's stuff because she's down in Adams County and I'm a county over when I'm down on my job site east of Cincinnati. And we both run across in that region. I have in other places as well, but very heavy down there. A very, very heavy black, almost tar-like lichen that's just incredible to get off. And we sent some samples of it to. We have a guy named Don Hilton. Who's been a geologist. He's retired now, but he was a geologist for over 35 years. He's still got some connections locally with the lab. And so they're actually looking at these different lichens, and we're hoping to build kind of a library of these different types of growths. But he's coming to the determination. I mean, right now we're nicknaming it the black ick. Because it is a very tar-like sort of thing, but so far what he's been able to determine, because he's asked us a lot of questions too, because we've sent him the sample, he can send the lab, get a good analysis of it, but then he'll ask us, okay, well, what's the immediate area like? And what we're really finding, and was one of the light bulb moments, which I kind of felt stupid about, and so did Elaine, especially Elaine, because she's a good old farm girl from southern Ohio, was the whole ammonia thing. He said, you've got open fields next door. They spray, all kinds of different chemicals. They spray, to fertilizers and weed controls and everything. He said, I'll bank you money that's drifting over on a very porous stone, and creating growth. And we're even seeing that in the direction of the field, literally landing on the top or that side of it. But yeah, some of that really can eat into the stone. This is a moldy piece. Definitely had some missing, material in here. That Bobby did. I think looks very well. Given what she had to work with to begin with. I think she did a fantastic job on it.
I have a real quick question once again about lichen. Liken's kind of a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because if you leave it on, it continues to destroy the stone. And if you take it off and it's already eaten into the stone, then you've opened up a weak spot in the stone.
So far taken, most of it, unless it's really heavy, has been on there for a long time. It does not eat into it that often. That's not to say, like I said, I've found multiple places around Ohio and definitely down in southern Ohio where Elaine and I both work with this really heavy lichen that once we do get it cleaned off, you can see where it has pitted the stone. Because that's what Don's finding out as well, that this particular type, and plus all the other factors involved, the length that it's been on there, and everything will burrow deeply into the stone. But as long as we're not using a mechanical method to clean the stone, as long as we use the D2, once we do get it clean, we've not noticed any deterioration. And we have looked for that as well, because the first thing you kind of wonder when you see something pitted or deteriorated is, wow, how long is this going to last? Because you'll certainly run across your share of stones that are beginning to sugar. Very flaky, and literally when you put your hand across them, it feels like you've got gritty grains of sugar. Now, something like that, you can use a couple of different types of consolidant to strengthen the stone. But so far, we've not noticed anything that warrants us putting a consolidant on the stone after we've noticed pitting beneath what we have cleaned out with the lichen. And like you said, it is a double-edged sword, because if you leave the lichen on there, it is most certainly going to further deteriorate the stone. So that is kind of one of those bridges that you do kind of have to cross, which all goes back to really examining a stone very thoroughly to begin with, to get a feel for what you're really dealing with before you attempt to do much with it. And we try to cover that, in here. We do with the safety stuff, and we kind of have weaved it all the way through. How best to really, kind of judge these stones.
Now, when you use the D2 on lichen, a lot of people in this class, go on trips, to locate their ancestors' gravestones. And, obviously a lot of them are going to have the lichen on it, but they're not there for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, to do continuous work on the stone. With the D2, right, could you just spray it on and leave, and then eventually the lichen will fall off?
Yeah, I mean, to a degree, you really never know for sure. We've experimented with that. Definitely when I, have a contracted job where I'm going to be there for a good month or 2 months, or I know I'm coming back the next season. That really allows me to do some experimentation on this. And yeah, sometimes, I'll do this just to see, how well to do with just spraying it on and walking away. I'll spray some on and come to that stone later that month, to see, how well did that loosen things up to make the cleaning job on it easier. Sometimes it works really well to just do that and walk away from it, and other times it doesn't. I would recommend, really, taking the water in the plastic scrapers and things like that, and trying to, clean it the best you can, taking the heavy stuff off, like we recommend under the cleaning section, and then spraying it with the D2, because the D2 is a time release thing. It takes a good 3 months normally, but then that also depends, on the area, on the weather, and it is something that does work with the outdoor elements. You could not put a stone in a garage and clean it and think it's going to work. It has to have the outside temperature change, the rain, the natural atmospheric conditions.
So you're saying that to clean lichen, first sweep over, you should just use clean water and a plastic scraper?
I usually do. Like I said, we've gone over a lot of different ways to clean under the cleaning section. Myself, okay, I'll tell you my personal preference, and that is mainly, it's got to do with, experience from doing it, but also combined with doing it as commercial work, because it is a job, and money is time and time is money. What works best for me is to, if it's real heavy, I'll generally take. I've got a couple of nylon brushes. Ones that I buy from the dollar store. I'll take one and I will dry brush all the stuff off. Now, be careful. You don't want to breathe it. Some lichens are not healthy things to breathe in. But the main thing is get the majority off. I'll scrub it down with just plain water, top to bottom. Rinse it, and then not let it totally dry. But then just put a spritz coating of the D2 over it and walk off. That seems to work the best for me, and I feel pretty confident that you could probably pretty well walk away from it after that point, and not come back for months or years or whatever the case may be. Because I got started doing this through genealogy too, and I've done a great deal of travel, a couple 100-mile stretches at a time, and you just cannot. It's not like going around the corner, in your hometown. So you do want to think about, are you getting the most bang for your buck for your time, your effort, your money, and everything? That seems to work the best for me. But there's a number of ways to do it. So kind of experiment, pick the one that works best for you.
Okay.
Does anybody want to see a really cool video?
Yeah.
Okay. A little sidebar. This is a video I made up. Now this is on the how do I put it? This is on the big gargantuan end of doing projects, because of the size of the pieces to this. This was a job I did down in southern Ohio, down in the area where we're having the class, where I've worked. Let's see, this will be the fourth year I've gone down there and worked for that township. This was just a very large family monument that actually scared me away for a year, because I did not really have my head wrapped around how I was going to deal with it. But I did work with the township on getting this together, because what was really needed to put this together would have been not my expertise of how to put the pieces together, but the expertise of somebody with very large equipment to move these big pieces. But I'll just leave that said and just play the video.
Well, Mark, that is amazing.
That was quite a job.
I got to ask, how long did that job take?
It took, let me see. Well, not much over 3 weeks.
Wow, that is amazing.
Thanks.
Now the inevitable question, was that all volunteer work, or was that like something that was funded by somebody?
Well, the township paid for it. Volunteer work. Elaine came down. She helped out for that day. Did help me clean and hunt up a lot of pieces. And absolutely, the township came down. With the big equipment, they came down and moved everything apart, and then came in and put it all back together. That probably took us about 3 hours, but the rest of it was me all by myself.
Wow, that is impressive.
Thanks.
But it only goes to show, what volunteers and joining up with other organizations can accomplish.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I say, I do so much of this. It is my living. I do it on my own. Now I'll get together with another conservator every now and then on something that's too big for me. Where I really need somebody there for just the extra hand and the safety factor. But yeah, most of it, for myself is solo work. But yeah, like I said, Bobby from up Michigan or Kate or Elaine have got groups of people together, and they pick a weekend. They go out and they all work together and get a lot accomplished. So yeah, the more people, the better. So
how does one become a conservator?
Well, that's I don't know how do I really want to answer that. The only real official type of conservator training that I've been able to find would be something through the park system, and that would be really a matter of becoming a park system employee, and them putting you through school or through their own type of training. I'm not really aware. I mean, I'm aware of a few colleges that have some programs, but the thing is, it's a lot of hit and miss. There's nothing really standardized, and that's kind of why we put the word standard into our organization. We've gotten a lot of grief from it because some, standard to some people has a bad connotation. To us, it's like, well, there needs to be some sort of guideline. There should be breathing room in every guideline, but there has to be at least some sort of a guideline. And we have not found anything other than actually being an employee for the park system and going through one of their training programs. So um, I hope that answers that.
So for the average person, who has seen the presentation today, the average person's probably going to just want to go out and clean their own ancestors' graves. So you're saying basically, as long as you read the website, you understand the do no harm policies or recommendations, using the safe chemicals, they can basically do the majority of the work that they would set out to want to do. I mean, obviously they're not going to be probably moving stones like the video you just showed us, multi-ton stones. But for the average person, they can go out and clean, right, safely.
No, that's exactly what one of the things that we geared this for. The six basics are there. And again, as always, I always highly recommend, you get to a class where somebody's teaching these good procedures. And there's a lot of people, there's a fair amount of people that do teach classes. Use the site as as a guide. Look at who's teaching a class that you might be interested in and go back to the site and go, okay, are they, what are they using to put it together with? What are they using to clean with? What are their steps? And kind of, use it, like say, as a guideline to see if, the person who's instructing something that you might want to go to is doing something harmful, or are they, pretty much on the same page. But yeah, most of the people that I run across and that come to the classes are really, really concerned with cleaning. They're interested in the repairs, but cleaning is their number one because, they want to be able to read the stone, and that is mainly the big purpose for genealogy. So what we've got in the cleaning section, if you stuck with that, we've tried to make it fail safe. You really can't go wrong. Again, as long as you've checked, make sure you've checked safety. Make sure that's not a stone that's really wobbly, is going to fall on you. That's something I do want to stress. People are killed every year. Grown adults and children as well. Somebody pushes on a stone or leans on it in a bad way and it, falls on them, they get killed or injured. So that's number one. And then, to make sure that it's not, really crumbling and coming apart. If it's a good solid stone, then you should be able to follow the cleaning practices we have on there and not have anything to worry about.
Excellent. Okay. I'd like to open up the class for questions. Anybody quite have some questions? No? Okay, yeah, we do have. Go ahead. Did you hear the question, Mark?
I could not hear a thing.
Okay, the question was, is after you clean a stone, do you need to put any kind of a sealant on it to keep it, safe?
No, actually, that's a very bad idea. And no, I mean, that's a very good question. I'm glad it got brought up because that does get asked a lot. Sealants are bad, any sort, because it's a stone, but it's basically like a sponge as well. It takes water and atmospheric things in, and also any given day that you could go to a cemetery after a week-long rain. If it's an old marble or sandstone or limestone that's a porous type of stone, they can almost double their weight due to the water that they hold. So if you put a sealant on them, things can't get out, and they will not. You'll disrupt the normal natural cycle, and stones can actually break apart, especially in a freeze-thaw type of a thing. So no, you never want to put a sealant on anything because it impedes the what would be the wicking and the water transfer.
And I have seen this. You can buy D2 on Amazon, correct?
Yeah, Amazon's a good place, Amazon's a wonderful place to buy a lot of things. But D2 is recognizable enough. It should pull up, in just your first search your first Google search. And I just recommend, D2 is D2 is D2. So go through and see who's got the best price, because so much of that's going to, be determined by, how somebody has their shipping set up and that type of thing. So, yeah, just do a basic Google search and shop for the best price.
So once again, it does not matter what the stone is made of, whether it's marble or sandstone. It doesn't make any difference. The D2 is going to do no harm.
The D2's, going to do no harm. It does work better on your older historics, your marbles, your limestones, and your sandstones. It'll work on granite. I've never had an issue with it. We've done a little bit of looking, at the Proseco Revive versus the D2 because of what side they sit on the pH scale. And I mean, we've run across some stuff, but and we've made mention in that, I think, under the pro and con, there's just not enough good evidence. Neither one of them has ever harmed any of the stone work, any of the different types of stones. But we'd run across some stuff that seemed like the Revive seemed to be better or worked better on the granites. And the D2 worked better on the more older porous stones. But that's just kind of a technicality. So if a person wanted to go in and get some D2 and go clean a granite stone, it's not going to harm a thing.
Yeah, I just came back from this last week. I was in Salt Lake City at the Roots Tech Convention, and they actually had a booth that was selling D2.
Oh, interesting. Do you remember, was it D2 itself, or was that a particular person?
They were selling, I don't know the person at the booth, but they were selling D2. You could buy the D2 just by itself if you'd like, in concentrated form, and then you can dilute it, and then they were selling brushes and such like that. You could buy as little or as much as you wanted to.
Ah, interesting. Yeah, because I've gotten to know most all the people in the business because it is a small field. So I was just curious, if that was actual D2 being represented out of Texas, or somebody that has, kind of got like a franchise with it and selling. But yeah, one thing you did mention that is interesting is there's been a lot of talk about diluting it. Now, I never dilute it. You can. We've experimented with that. So yeah, you could try your hand at diluting some of it, but I'd never heard anybody actually selling it diluted. That's interesting. Very.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, let's give him a big hand, shall we? Mark, I want to thank you for your time and your expertise, and I will, once again, I want to thank you for letting us to record this as well. That will make it so our students can watch it back if they had any questions. And do you mind if they reach out to you directly if they do have a question?
Oh, absolutely. No problem at all. You can find us and email us, or best way really is, if you can find us on Facebook, get a hold of us that way. But yeah, more than happy to answer questions and, help out with things.
Okay, I think we did have one more question. Go ahead.
Do you have a link on the site to some of the tools?
The question is do you have a link on your website to some of the tools that you would help clean stones?
Yeah, let me see if I want to make sure that didn't disappear, because let me see what I got under tools and supplies. I think the only thing we've got under there right now is, is the monument jack and the probe and the wedge lead. You'll find as you read, through the site, you'll find the references to the different types of mortar, and everybody knows what D2 is. Now, were you speaking specifically about tools or more products?
Tools or products?
To lift.
To lift a stone.
Oh, that's in there as well. We've got. I'm trying to think where that is exactly. I know we didn't get rid of it. As far as the tripod, we want to try to put something together. Actually, we'll add more to it. because there's a couple of different ways to make a tripod. There are several that you can buy. And then, of course, the tripod would come with a hoist and nylon straps. That will be should be under one of the drop downs in some place.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, Mark, we're going to go ahead and sign off, and all you have to do on your end is just click on that little red hang up button, and that should appear if you take your mouse and hover towards the top middle part of your page. And once again, thank you very much for your time and expertise, and I'll be in touch with you again next week.
Okay, sounds good. Glad to have helped.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.